What is your excuse for not getting things done? There's lots of excuses out there. I'm too busy. I'm too overcommitted. I'm too broke. I'm too old. I'm too young. Whatever the excuse is, it doesn't matter. But here's what I recommend for you on this Front Row Friday is do a little bit of research on someone who had that same excuse and went ahead and achieved great results despite the excuse. I'll give you a perfect example. Too old. There's some people that say, at this age, it's too late to fulfill my dreams, or it's too late to fulfill what's on my bucket list. Well, I'm reminded of George Dawson. What an inspiring story George has. He had to quit school at a young age because his family needed him to work in the farm so they could afford their living expenses. And he never went back to school until one day someone knocked on his door and sold him on an adult education program. And at 98 years old, George Dawson learned how to read for the first time. And then when he turned 101, he flew to New York City to celebrate the publication of his first book. So if you've ever had your age as an excuse, think of George Dawson and be inspired and go for your dreams anyway. What about the opposite? What about being too young? And maybe you think you're not ready yet. You don't have enough credibility or experience under your belt to fulfill your ultimate dream. Well, I'm reminded of Alexandra Nikita. Alexandra Nikita was a young girl who loved to paint. She spent hours and hours and hours painting in her bedroom, and her parents got concerned that her behavior was a little obsessive. So they took away all of her coloring books and forced her to go outside and play. Well, she would just sneak back in. And since she didn't have any coloring books, she just got blank paper and just created her own designs and painted them in, thus creating for herself abstract art before she even knew what it was. In fact, later on, when she was taken to a museum, she saw a Picasso for the first time and she said, "Wow, someone else paints like me." Well, her painting became so popular that she started to sell her paintings. And I think at 8 years old, she sold her first painting for 50 bucks. But then she got really popular, and then there was some press and media behind her, and then she did her own exhibits. By the time she was 13 years old, she already sold $1.5 million worth of paintings. And now she's a very successful artist. So those are just two excuses that you can't use anymore because there's evidence out there of people who had the same excuse and then went ahead and achieved success anyway. So on today's Front Row Friday, what I suggest for you is to take a look at what has been one of your excuses in the past and then do some research on someone who had that same excuse and they went on to greatness anyway. Thanks so much for watching. Here's to letting go of all your excuses and achieving your next front row seat. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.